Recording in progress.
Can we go? Ok, allora parto io, non c'è problema. Then let me go, please.
Yeah.
No? Non mi badano. Scusate, ma non posso fare 5 minuti. Ma se non me lo dite. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's a pleasure to start our CITTASLOW International Academy. This is an intense week before our General Assembly next Saturday. We will have 8 webinars in 5 days and about 45 speakers. So it is so important moment to dialogue, to open a common dialogue and inspiring ourselves in several CITTASLOW topics. Okay, we start immediately with the first CITTASLOW webinar, the Green Deal CITTASLOW and the 17 UN-SDGs. A few words to introduce the moment of starting and our speakers. The pandemic has opened the eyes of many of us. Millions and millions of Earthlings today, unfortunately or fortunately, understand much better what good living, easy living means. CITTASLOW, thanks to the founder Paolo Saturnini, whom we don't forget at all, and to a group of mayors and many slow communities among the first in the world who have understood that change is possible. You can live better, and today you must, in alliance with the citizens of tomorrow. Imagine zero carbon cities with green mobility, with more green spaces, fewer shopping centers, more public green areas, more spaces for socializing, more attention to the quality of production and consumption. Security does not only mean prevention and defense. It means above all good governance, easy living life, new style of life, and respect for the right to health and well-being for all. CITTASLOW, with its concrete projects grounded by mayors and citizens, has anticipated the debate that is popular today by decades. And even the SDGs of the United Nations coincide 90% with the parameters launched almost 20 years ago, earlier by CITTASLOW. We say this with pride, but also with the awareness that we will have to work even harder and harder. Today, we talk about this with our important speakers whom we all thank. Let's start with Manfred DÖRR, Vice President of CITTASLOW International, coordinator of the German CITTASLOW network and mayor of DEIDESHEIM. The German CITTASLOW have always strongly brought the environmental issue into priority. And then it is so important starting, thanks Manfred. After him, there is a communication by architect and professor Andrea Calori from ESTA of Milan, partner of CITTASLOW, who has plumbed the SDGs UN and the CITTASLOW parameters in the comparative way. It will be followed by the Professor Gabriele De Antoni, Department of Law, Politics and International Studies of PARMA University, who will give us a picture of the influence of the regulations between the general and the particular in the city. Then we will have the speech by BOŻENA, CEBULSKA, the director and our good friend of mine of the Polish, my colleague of the Polish CITTASLOW network, one of the most active on the planet. And we will conclude with two interesting study cases. Two projects already completed into CITTASLOW. One is SAMATAN in France from Janet Chambers, town councillor. Good morning, Janet. And one more in Mold, Wales, UK, Andrea MEARNS of the Mold Plastic Reduction Steering Group. Okay, let me start, please, the stage to Manfred DÖRR, our Vice President, please.
Yeah, okay, good morning of all to you. I hope you are well and we can send out some important impulses for a better world again at this year's General Assembly. Our topic today is the environment and especially the EU's Green Deal and the UN's 17 SDGs. The European Green Deal is a concept presented by the European Commission on 11th of December 2019 with the aim of reducing net emissions of greenhouse gases in the European Union to zero by 2050 and thus becoming the first continent to be neutral.
Avevo stampato un coso. Grazie.
Okay. The Green Deal is intended to bring the economy into line with our planet and to ensure that economy works for the people, said Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. She goes on to explain, I am convinced that the old growth model, which are based on fossil fuels and pollution, is outdated and no longer meets the needs of our planet. The 10 most important points of the Green Deal are, first, a climate neutral Europe. The EU wants to strive to become climate neutral by 2050. In practice, this means updating the EU's climate targets. Greenhouse gases are to be reduced by 50 to 55% instead of previous 40% by 2030. This is the overarching goal of the Green Deal. Second, circular economy. This refers to a sustainable production policy that consumes fewer materials and also ensures that products can be reused and recycled. A key objective is also to prepare for clean steel production with green hydrogen by 2030, according to an EU official. Third, buildings and renovation energy. The central goal here is at least double or even triple the renovation rate of buildings. In the field of energy, the focus is on the transition to renewable energies. In the long term, the manufacturing industry in particular is to work only with renewable energy sources. Fourth, no environmental pollution. For air, soil, or water, a pollutant-free environment must be achieved by 2050, EB through a chemistry strategy for a non-toxic environment. Fifth, ecosystems and biodiversity. A new biodiversity strategy aims to tackle the main causes of biodiversity loss. This includes the measure already mentioned to combat soil, air, and water pollution, as well as a new forestry strategy in which there will be more trees both in cities and in rural areas. 6. From farm to table. A new agricultural strategy is to ensure a greener and healthier agricultural system. This includes significantly reducing the use of chemical pesticides, fertilizers, and antibiotics. 7th, mobility and transport. In the automotive sector, CO2 emissions are to be reduced from the current 95 grams per kilometer to 0 grams by 2030. This means further promoting electromobility, expanding the charging infrastructure, and providing sustainable alternative fuels, biofuels, or hydrogen for aviation, shipping, and heavy goods transport. 8. Finance. Here the Commission wants to set up a mechanism for a fair energy transition and support regions that are currently most dependent on fossil fuels and coal production. For the most vulnerable regions and sectors, 100 billion euros is to be mobilized. 9th, science and innovation. With a proposed budget of 100 billion euros for the next 7 years, a research and innovation program is to make a massive contribution to the Green Deal. In addition, 35% of EU researching funding is to be allocated to climate-friendly technologies in the future. 10th, internal relations. After all, EU diplomacy should support the Green Deal. One measure that is likely to attract attention and account thinking in the future is the proposal for a so-called CO2 marginal tax. The purpose is to ensure that the non-EU countries also fulfill their task in terms of climate protection. Frans Timmermans, EU Commissioner for Climate Action, justified the need for a climate-friendly reconstruction program with intergenerational justice. The loans to be taken out now would have to be repaid by future generations who have an interest in being able to live in an ecologically intact world. If you take a closer look of the individual points of the Green Deal, you will find many demands and goals that have been pursued and implemented at CITTASLOW for years, especially in the cities and municipalities where people are directly affected. There is also room for change and innovation. This also applies to the UN 17 Sustainable Goals, which were put into effect on 1st of January 2060 for sustainable development with a duration of 15 years until 2030. In this 2030 agenda, as the project is also called, people are the center of sustainable development. It is basically about creating better living conditions for all people on our planet. The goals apply to all countries worldwide and are intended to ensure sustainable development on an economic, social, and ecological level. However, sustainability begins in the municipalities and cities. They are the basis for the implementation of the 17 SDGs in the municipalities where people live work, spend their free time, and have family and friends, the concern for sustainability is greatest. The CITTASLOW mission statement, which is about the sustainable development of cities and communities, worth living in according to the three-pillar model of economy, ecology, and social cohesion, can be very helpful in achieving the sustainable development goals. Therefore, it would be our wish that in the future, 17 SDGs be included in the catalogue of criteria for inclusion in the CITTASLOW network. Many of our CITTASLOW goals already coincide with the 17 SDGs. I believe that our international cross-border and cross-ideological community of values can actively and effectively participate in the implementation of the UN 17 Sustainable Development Goals and also in the implementation of the EU Green Deal. By including the 17 SDGs in CITTASLOW'S catalogue of criteria, this could also be put into practice worldwide via our members. Thank you for your attention. I look forward to your contributions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Manfred, our Vice President. Thanks to have opened our works, very important speech. And now the second speaker is the Professor Andrea Calori. It is expert of territorial policies and also professor at the Polytechnics Institute University in Milan, and expert in regional planning and local development. Andrea Calori will introduce an important issue about the comparison between the CITTASLOW criteria and the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. Please, Andrea, thanks.
Thank you, Prof. Giorgio, for the introduction, and thank you especially also to Manfred DÖRR, because he introduced very well the topic of the SDGs as an important framework for sustainability, which is very important for the development of CITTASLOW, in my opinion. And to get deep inside this idea of the connection between CITTASLOW and the general framework of the SDGs, I would like to share a presentation about it. Okay. To put on the table some topics and questions about what kind of relations between CITTASLOW and the SDGs, and what, in my opinion, CITTASLOW can do in relation with the SDGs. Some topics for sharing ideas and for growing together among the cities, but also some proposal for a possible common action among CITTASLOW and the other kind of networks. So some pieces of information just to start about the SDGs, because for sure you know the 17 colored squares representing the 17 goals of the SDGs, because there is a lot of communication about it, so every one of you should know it. And we know that, like Manfred DÖRR has just told some minutes ago, they were adopted by the United Nations as a kind of universal framework for action. So there is a global narrative of sustainability behind the 17 goals. And this is why we know all these 17 colored squares. It is a global narrative with a lot of communication, but also a global framework for action, which was discussed with a lot of people, with hundreds and maybe thousands of meetings before 2015. And for those of you who are familiar with the sustainable development, the 17 goals are something new, but they can be referred to the three dimensions of sustainability, the three main dimensions, so the economic sustainability, society, and the environment, the biosphere. So it's new. It's a new narrative with a very strong sustainability basis from a scientific point of view. And this is because before Sustainable Development Goals, so the so-called Agenda 2030, there is the long story of sustainability that started in the Rio Conference, the so-called Rio Conference of the United Nations, which was the institutional beginning of the story of sustainability, not the scientific beginning, but the institutional beginning. So in the conference of Rio de Janeiro in 1992, there was a huge involvement of nation, civil society organization, regions, and so on. There a common agenda. It was called Agenda 21, the agenda for the 21st century. And then after some discussion, we know that there was the promotion of the Millennium Development Goals. So some goals, to select some goals to implement for the new millennium, the sustainable development. And after 20 years of the Rio de Janeiro conference, there was the Rio +20 summit, just to say, okay, what we did in 20 years for sustainable development. So these are the main. There are a lot of meetings around the world. We know the COP26, which is now coming in the next year about climate change, but there is the Convention of Biodiversity and so on. But this is more or less the main steps for sustainable development as an institutional pact. And so the SDGs are the last step. And so there is a story behind, with a new narrative based on 17 sustainable goals. This is the acronym SDG. And if you go deep inside the SDGs, we can say, okay, there are goals: no poverty, zero hunger, good health, and so on. And behind each goal, there is a description. This is only the title of the description, but since there was a very, very long story and a lot of negotiation with a lot of meetings before defining the Agenda 2030, inside each goal, there are a lot of discussions and a lot of tools and also indicators to measure the situation, the actual situation, but also to understand what kind of steps, what kind of dynamics, what kind of future, what kind of decision we can take go on towards sustainability. This is why I say that that's the Agenda 2020 and the 2030 and the 17 goals are a global narrative, because it's a way to discuss about what is sustainability, synthesizing the complexity of sustainability into 17 goals. Each goal has a description, but also a number of targets. So there is a political decision at the global level to say, okay, these are the goals. And behind the goals, there are a lot of targets, 169 targets, to measure the capability of the nation, the government, the civil society, the enterprises to go in the direction of the 17 goals. Why targets? Because it's important to have an evidence-based approach to promote policies, to promote actions, and to manage and to measure. So it's important to understand the two levels, the 17 goals and the 169 targets. It's important to achieve a global consensus based on evidences and data and good information with a scientific basis. And in the Agenda 2030, there is not the obligation, but a strong commitment to promote voluntary guidelines at local, regional, national, and international level to go in the direction of the 17 goals. And there are a lot of nations, but also regions in the world that are promoting voluntary reviews, mainly annual or biannual voluntary reviews based on the targets. So to measure in each nation what kind of progresses are we doing in the direction of the sustainable goals. So we have Germany, Turkey, European Union, Asia, China, Japan, Brazil, Senegal, African countries also, and a lot of these are voluntary actions, voluntary reviews to have a common framework with the indicators to say, okay, where we are going. There are also important economic sector or a scientific discipline who are working using the same narrative and to say, okay, which is the contribution of education to the SDGs, which is the point of view of water manager in the management in the SDGs, why nutrition, why soil, why health are important in the perspective of SDGs. So I always say SDGs are a common narrative and a common framework of action. So at every level, institution can assess the level of sustainability by using the monitoring system, the targets, the 169 targets, the SDGs. But also we can create a narrative, we use a narrative of the SDGs to understand our sector that can be health, water management, education, and so on, in the perspective of SDGs. So just to say some suggestions, some keys for a possible interaction between CITTASLOW and the SDGs. As Manfred DÖRR told, there is not only a narrative, but also institutional processes. Manfred mentioned that Timmermans at the European Commission and the European Parliament. All over the world, there are similar institutions working, creating this kind of interaction. So some suggestions for CITTASLOW. The first, and I think it's very important, the first step is to remind to ourselves the CITTASLOW certification with a lot of 72 requirements divided into 7 macro areas. You perfectly know these areas because you are CITTASLOW, because you are certified CITTASLOW. So the certification process is at the beginning, at the ground of CITTASLOW. So this certification is based on a quite complex list of indicators divided into 7 macro areas. You perfectly know. And so it's not so different to the mechanism of the SDGs. So you have 7 macro areas and a number of requirements with indicators. And also the SDGs are divided into 17 goals, that means areas, and a number of targets corresponding to the areas. So it's interesting to understand what kind of relation that can be between the certification process of CITTASLOW and the monitoring system of the SDGs. And this is important. This is a suggestion that I'm putting on the table because CITTASLOW has a very strong experience at the local level because like Manfred DÖRR told before, sustainability starts from each places, each cities, each village. And if we don't know anything at the local level, it's impossible to speak about the global level because how to manage the whole global level without the involvement of every places. And so CITTASLOW has a strong experience in a territorialized approach for sustainability, which is not in the approach of the goals. Yes, it is implicit because they say at all levels, starting from the local level, sustainability is something starting with the connecting the local and the global. But the indicators are, for now, the 169 indicators are defined for the national level and at least the regional level. From a technical point of view, there are proposed and set for the national level. from a technical and scientific point of view. So there is a perspective of a local approach, but indicators are national and regional level. And one of the challenges of the SDGs is that there is a huge discussion in the world how to territorialize the SDGs. This can be the key. Can be the experience of CITTASLOW for the local level. You have indicators at city level. You have a consolidated experience on what makes the difference in ability for a city. And this can be a real value to exchange at institutional, political, but also technical and scientific level with the SDGs. And so, just to close my presentation, some keys for a possible interaction between CITTASLOW and SDGs is really to share and to open a discussion about the role of CITTASLOW, but behind that, the role of cities and the role of your experience in the certification of cities, your experience of measuring sustainability with the participation of the people, with the participation of the mayors and the other local stakeholders, to share a common narrative, to share a monitoring system. And then with this technical and scientific base, to do some advocacy, some political and institutional advocacies for cities at the all level, the United Nations level, international or supranational institution like the European Commission, European Parliaments, but also there are Asian, African, and North American, South American institutions. So the global level, the international institution, continental or regional institution, but also national government to do some advocacy for the cities by using this narrative, the narrative that you have in your hands as CITTASLOW. So this was the message I wanted to share with you to help and to facilitate the creation of a connection between CITTASLOW and SDGs. And so thank you very much. So I can leave the floor to the next person, and thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Andrea Calori. Very good, complete and enlightening speech and analysis in a not so easy comparison between our pattern of CITTASLOW and our assessment process and the SDGs aims. It is so interesting. ESTA is the Economy and Sustainability Reality in Milan, is CITTASLOW partner. And another partner is University of Parma. The next speaker is Giacomo De Antoni. Very interesting speech because he will enter in the between from the macro and micro in the cities, but under the light and the vision from the regulation. Regulation is so important, laws, the world of laws. Prego, Giacomo.
Grazie, grazie intanto. Potete sentire?
Thank you. Can you hear me? Fine. Thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy to be able to make this presentation for the content of the webinars during these days and the context it takes place. As it has been said by the previous speaker, I thank him for the presentation of the SDG, so that I do not have to talk about them, and I would take profit of his intervention. I think it's hugely important in order to share information as well as to share best practices in terms of environmental impact and sustainability. In my speech, I won't go in detail about the 17 goals I thank Professor Calori, who has already described them. I would try, as said by Giorgio Olivetti, I will try to give a perspective that I hope that will put together the global, the macro the overview and the micro overview that has been already introduced as a dichotomy and perspective by the previous speaker. I will try to put those two perspectives together, trying to give an approach that is an operative one as much as possible. So regarding the implementation, the ability to intervene at local level in order to promote actions and behaviors that are consistent with the 17 SDG and many targets that characterize them. Starting from two concepts, I will start from two concepts, and I hope that at the end of my intervention, it will be clear what is the link between the two concepts I will talk about, but also their implementation in terms of connection with the SDGs and possible implementation at local level and macro level. The two concepts that I would like to describe and that I have in mind are, on the one side, good, the common good. I think that many of you will think about the their conception and the possibility of promoting virtuous behaviors in order to avoid this tragedy of common goods. So to find ways in order to stimulate behaviors of citizens within local contexts in order to avoid the waste of common goods in order to have sustainable behaviors. The idea of commons is the idea of virtuous behaviors promoted by various actions, activities that can be put in place at various levels. Regarding common goods, I would like to mention just two key characteristics that define them. I am an economist, and I will use this key of reading of interpretation. According to the definition that I adopt, they are not just excludable, but they regard the consumption. So what does it mean? Who decides to consume a good can do that, and it is very hard for technical reasons or for reasons related to cost to avoid the access and use of those common goods. For example, fishing in open water, investing hugely for the coastal guard. You can limit the access to fishing, but it is very hard for many situations that we have in mind, and this is often impossible. Let's think about another example to connect to the SDGs. I think about the ozone layer and its consumption. How can we avoid that single citizens can behave in a way in order to damage these common goods that whose consumption and whose threat cannot be avoided? Of course, there are ways in order to promote virtuous behaviors, but in terms of imposition, it becomes very hard. The other characteristic of the common goods, they are rival common goods. For example, for the ozone and fishing, they use consume them and make them less accessible by others. The problem is that those two characteristics together and the possibility to access to them with the less control is the fact that your use will lead to, let's think about an excessive fishing activity or too intensive, and this impoverishing fishing resource. This is damaging others, and this is causing some incentives to others to exploit excessively the common goods, and this goes over the singular cost, and you do not take care of the result and the effect on others, and this leads to the impoverishment, to the dissolution of the resource, and this causes dangerous consequences, and this is linked to climate change and the SDGs that we are talking about today. But they are behaviors that, from a control point of view, they become very hard to be stopped, because individual incentives are in the wrong direction. Of course, there are solutions to those problems, so we can think about that they are linked to environmental issues, and I would like to mention some of them, and then I will follow with the second concept and then conclude. What are the solutions that have been proposed to manage in the best way possible so the interests of exploiting them too much? So you can push towards regulations or moral regulations or social regulations regarding the characterization of society. So with sanctions for the ones who do not respect the rules, or rules of good exploitation of the resources. This works. I will mention Ostrom, that has won a Nobel Prize for economy for his studies on common goods. He has shown that in some communities you can self-organize in order to manage in the right way fishing resources or water or wood or land. And social and moral regulations have an important relevance, but it's not easy. It's not always easy to promote those regulations. I wanted to mention them. For example, number 4 of the 17 SDGs. This highlights the role of education and highlights that above all as a crucial element in order to favor of the civic sense that would promote also the other 16 goals. So education and the promotion of growth of those rules is a way in the middle term, and that can be followed with also other solutions. Among them, there can be the concept of privatization. Many of you may recall the question of land in the UK, so with the single lots that are assigned to private people. When you apply this kind of strategy, the single citizen that has to manage a single resource that is no more common but private, they will manage that according to costs, and the cost will be borne by each of them. So what is the problem of this kind of solution for the commons that we have in mind and that are linked to the SDGs? Is that so many of them, of those common goods, cannot be divided. Let's think about the ozone layer and others. The last solutions and strategy that we have is the intervention of the public sector. Giorgio was talking about the role of regulation, and it proposes some rules, but then it defines some sanctions and identifies institutions that make those rules be respected. The question of commons, when we talk about sustainability at global level, is the issue is to have enforcement mechanisms in order to promote the respect of rules at global level and their implementation. So those resolutions are present in literature, already exist, but they imply many difficulties and issues in order to be implemented in the framework of the commons we are talking about. And then I go to the second concept that is rather controversial in literature, and it is the nudge. So this gentle push in Italy, the nudging is an approach that is relatively recent and is born within the behavioral science. And one of the sustainer has won recently a Nobel Prize for economy as well. And what does this mean? What are the nudge? They are, and I read one of the possible definition, are interventions that address people in special directions, and they also allow to go your way. For example, the sound of the security belt in a car, or for example, the color that indicates that you are consuming too much energy in your house. So we have in some cities in Europe, in Italy as well, we have waste bins with the signs that say that it would be beautiful if the environment would be respected and waste would not be left on the street. So we have different examples of nudge, and they are linked to virtuous practices for the management of the environment. Why do they work? They should work because they increase information. So when I am not aware of the energy consumption that I'm causing, I have a device that can push me towards a virtuous behavior of sparing energy. For example, in other cases, they make easier to have some behaviors. For example, the box that is put on some tables in some places or local or pubs, you can put a smartphone in that box. So this can turn irrationality of some behaviors for the management of common goods. So if with those information, with those highlights, I promote the behavior, good behaviors, and I say that some behaviors are negative in the long term, this would bring me to positive results. For example, collection of waste and policies like these. And what is the critic? And I conclude to nudging. The main critic is related to the idea of paternalism. Who is deciding what is the virtuous behavior to be put in place? In some cases, it appears to be trivial. Sometimes for energy consumption, it seems trivial, but in other cases, like they can cause trade-offs, so they cause costs in terms of environment. So I have various choices to be taken, and who thinks about nudging as a push, as an addressing as a direction? Who decides what is better? This is a very sensible matter, because this influences preferences and influences And this should be as soft as possible without imposing things. For example, with products in the shelter, on the shelters, there are some products that are preferred rather than others. So we should have products that are linked to profits. Who decides that? So the nudging, the answer of the sustainers of nudging say there is a constant context of choice that has to be proposed. So in the shelters, in the supermarket, for example, so you cannot have a neutral context in for a behavior. The second answer that is more interesting for our network is to favor the behavior, the inclusion of citizens and the ones who receive nudging. When you decide what is the objective to be followed. So if I ask the citizens what is the solutions that you would like for this square, for example, in order to have to avoid for example, to pollute a place. Is this the right solution? So we can decide together what is the objective, and then you can decide to adopt some techniques in terms of incentives, but not in terms of impositions, but of stimulus to achieve the objective. So they have to be decided from within, and I conclude. So the idea is that for some behaviors, we can have the difficulty of implementing them in terms of resolutions that we have today. But one of the main problems is the irrationality of individual behaviors, and that you can teach people how those behaviors are so irrational by acting on the context of choices they are in. So thank you, and I stop here.
Thank you so much, Giacomo De Antoni. Very enlightening speech. You put hands in a very complicated matter and problems of our age. Very interesting for CITTASLOW, because the relationship between the individual behavior and the community and political decisions, the common interest and the private interest, it's the daily life activities in CITTASLOW, and the mayors and citizens of CITTASLOW are very aware about that. About education, we are very committed about the relationship with schools, the world of schools, but also with civic education. And probably in the relationship, positive dialogue and relationship between the regulation by the municipality, but also other levels over regional and national, and the local behavior of the people, it's the solution, or quite a solution. Now, many of you have told about the put in the ground, the good principles and the aims of CITTASLOW. Yes, we are a good example in the world of territorialization. So, BOŻENA, CEBULSKA can introduce the three last contribution. Polish network is one of the most clever and smart in the CITTASLOW International organization, and it is interesting to hear a good example of best practices supporting the European Green Deal. Please.
Dzień dobry, bardzo miło mi
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is really my pleasure to be able to see you all. I'd like to welcome you very warmly indeed, and I'd like to begin with telling you that my presentation is very well embedded within what MANFRED has been talking about.
a mianowicie w tezy,
And I'm referring specifically to his thesis at the very beginning of this workshop.
Nie sposób uniknąć przypomnienia tego, co ważne w Europejskim Zielonym Ładzie.
Possible not to remind you about what is really vital for the European Green Deal.
Przypominamy te tezy, będziemy pewnie wszyscy w naszych wystąpieniach się o nie opierać.
These assumptions, and we are going to all be basing on this, is also related to the fact that this is very important not only for Europe, but also for the whole world. And CITTASLOW towns, which constitute a family of sustainable developing cities and towns, it is very important. As Manfred said, the European Green Deal is something of a very bold project of the European Commission for the sake of the sustainable economy. To one end. To another end, I believe that without the actual contribution on the part of civic society, on the part of local authorities, such a change, such a transition cannot come into being. These very ambitious goals that the European Commission has bring forth, that is the zero emission on the part of the greenhouse gases, the separation of the economic development from the exploitation, irreversible exploitation of the resources, and the sustainable development of all the regions in Europe. In this context, to achieve these goals, it is needed for all of us to be involved, to be engaged. We need all to take our part in order to engage in this process. The overarching principles of the European Green Deal can be summarized in 10 points. Let me remind you of them, despite of the fact that it has already been talked about. Europe free of pollution, of water, of air, and free of industrial contamination. That was point number one. Point number two, the transition into the circular economy. This means that the whole Europe adopts the assumptions and actions for the sake of circular economy. We take into consideration that this action plan, it was supposed to be adopted by March last year. It has not happened due to the pandemic. And as the same applied to many other of our plans, and we could have met in person, that we are meeting virtually, and these workshops, if they happened on site rather than offline, this would be much more vibrant if we could meet in person, if we could discuss all those things in person. Other assumptions of the European Green Deal is from farm to fork program. It does relate to the reduction of the chemical agents in agricultural activities. It also concerns the enlargement of organic farming in scope. And furthermore, it does apply to a greater share of organic produce in the actual trade. Then a joint green policy. This is something compounded with very ambitious ideals. It has a lot to do with a greater impact of agricultural policy, which is understood as also as farming and animal husbandry, and it has to have very much to do with climate neutrality. Next, just transition, which is all about the support for energetic transformation.
Tu pozwolę sobie powiedzieć krótki komentarz. To wsparcie jest dla Polski bardzo ważne, ponieważ
one simple commentary. This support mechanism is very vital for Poland. In Poland, we do have regions which run
przede wszystkim gospodarczo, ale od wielu lat jest tam tradycja również społeczna,
well enough.
Funkcjonowania przemysłu wydobywczego, węgla kamiennego i węgla brunatnego. I tutaj jest to duży sukces Komisji Europejskiej, że
and there is much success on the part of the European Commission that the just transition mechanism has been successfully implemented. This is due to the fact that this mechanism allows for a greater support on the part of citizens, local communities of the actual regions which, colloquially speaking, live from coal mining industries. And as they have been acquired for the reduction of that coal production, because they can feel safe and secure in economic terms. And this is indisputably a very important factor in terms of having success in the implementation of the European Green Deal. This feeling of cooperation on the part of civic society in their economic safety. Other assumptions of the European Green Deal are boiled down to the possibility of investing.
Powtarza się ten mechanizm, o którym mówiłam,
Green
kiedy obywatele
transition.
będą się
And
czuli
again,
bezpiecznie finansowo, bezpiecznie ekonomicznie, z pewnością ich
if citizens feel safe in economic terms, then they will be more involved in the processes and that are ongoing.
Kolejne założenie Zielonego Ładu,
there is yet another assumption of the European Green Deal,
mianowicie jest to założenie
which has a lot to do with economy.
Tego, żeby ta czysta, zielona energia była bardziej przystępna, była bardziej przystępna ekonomicznie. Założeniem równie ambitnym jak poprzednie jest założenie dotyczące osiągnięcia neutralności klimatycznej. Kolejne założenie jest założenie zrównoważonego transportu i wreszcie założenie dotyczące osiągnięcia ochrony europejskiego kapitału naturalnego, czyli tego, co jest ewidentnie nieodnawialne, a więc nasza różnorodność biologiczna.
That is our biodiversity, natural capital. Now, when it comes to the assumptions of the European Green Deal, I have discussed them already, but from the perspective of the CITTASLOW residents, we can say that
mają świadomość
the residents are indeed aware of the need to have changes in place on one part. On the other hand, they feel these changes can be unattainable for them for economic reasons.
Wprowadzaniu korzystania z odnawialnych źródeł energii,
the use of renewable energy sources has to be in place.
Finansowego.
Along with this, we need to ensure
konieczne jest ochronienie mieszkańców przed ubóstwem energetycznym. Dlatego, że bardzo duża grupa mieszkańców Europy, myślę, że tutaj poszerzając to grono na podstawie obserwacji polskiej sieci CITTASLOW, duża grupa mieszkańców Europy nie będzie w stanie korzystać z usług energetycznych pochodzących ze źródeł odnawialnych, jeśli ich ceny będą wysokie, i nasze działania w celu zmiany sposobu myślenia będą nieefektywne,
changing the mentality will be ineffective if they are not compounded with actions allowing for making renewable energy prices lower, especially for the individual households.
Umożliwienia korzystania ze źródeł odnawialnych jest czynnik dotyczący
renewable energies. We need to also make it possible for the buildings to be renovated in terms of thermal upgrading activities in Poland, and it is happening very much to a great scope. And I'm going to dwell on it in the further part of my presentation. In Poland, we are experiencing that in the thermal upgrading. This is what we call precisely thermal upgrading of buildings.
Absolutnie możemy potwierdzić, że przeprowadzenie tego typu renowacji
we can
pozwala
confirm
na
that
obniżenie
these kinds
rachunków
of
za
upgradings
zarówno za
make
energię, jak
it
i za ciepło
possible to
i ma to
lower
duży wpływ
the
na
electricity prices and heat prices.
sytuację ekonomiczną
And
zarówno
it has
sektora
very much
publicznego,
effects
jak i
on the economic
osób
standing
indywidualnych.
in the public and in the private sector, in the
Kolejna
private
rzecz,
sectors
na
alike.
którą zwraca
Next,
Europejski
what
Zielony Ład
the European
baczną
Green
uwagę,
Deal
to
points
są
to
zmiany w transporcie, jako że
transformation
transport
in
odpowiada za
transport, because
1/4
transport is
emisji
responsible for
gazów
1/4
cieplarnianych.
of greenhouse gases
Znowu
emissions.
mamy tutaj bardzo
And
dobre
again,
doświadczenia, jeśli chodzi
in
o
this context, we have
CITTASLOW,
established very positive experiences
polegające
in
na
our
wprowadzeniu
CITTASLOW network.
w dużej mierze
These experiences are about
umożliwieniu w dużej mierze
making
korzystania
it
przez
possible
mieszkańców
for the individual
środkami
residents
transportu takimi jak
to
rower,
use
takimi jak
such transformation
pojazdy
means as
elektryczne, również
bikes
wdrażane w
and other
komunikacji
vehicles.
publicznej.
This is also something that we are very much implementing in the sector of the public transportation modes.
Jest i wydaje mi się, że bez nie nadużyję tutaj niczego, nie będę używała
zbyt dużych słów, jeśli powiem, że wszystkie idee Zielonego Ładu to są idee CITTASLOW, are very much in parallel, are very much in harmony with the ideals of CITTASLOW.
Tak naprawdę wszystkie założenia, które mamy w dokumentach
programowych,
that we can find in the programming documents of our network, realizacji Europejskiego Zielonego Ładu.
Are assumptions that serve the implementation of the European Green Deal.
Dodatkowo, jeśli myślę, że nasza sieć, międzynarodowa sieć CITTASLOW jest bardzo dobrym przykładem tego, co proponuje Komisja Europejska. Ponieważ Komisja Europejska zakłada, że Europejski Zielony Ład nie może być osiągnięty bez pracy transgranicznej, bez współpracy wszystkich krajów Europy, a wręcz wszystkich krajów na świecie. Jeśli nie uda się włączyć do osiągania celów Ładu wszystkich mieszkańców, to tych celów po prostu nie uda się osiągnąć. A nasza sieć zrzesza już w tej chwili miasta z całego świata. Jest to ponad 30 państw.
We are talking about the representatives of over 30 nations. 275 towns.
Myślę, że jeśli one wszystkie deklarują gotowość realizacji CITTASLOW,
all these towns are ready to implement the ideas of CITTASLOW, automatically they have become the agents for the introduction and enforcement of the European Green Deal, which might be understood as the global Green Deal.
Przecież jeśli mówimy o tym, żeby promować lokalne produkty i wyroby, to nic innego jak wpisywanie się w to założenie dotyczące zielonego łańcucha od farmy do stołu Jeśli mówimy o czerpaniu ze zdobyczu żywności w zakresie, który może przyczynić się do realizacji celów ruchu gaz dobrej jakości CITTASLOW,
and the improvement of quality of life in CITTASLOW, this is all about the use of innovation for the sake of towns where living is good. In the idea of CITTASLOW, we find a sustainable development program based on local resources. And this is precisely very much embedded within the European Green Deal program. Finally, last but not least, environmental stewardship, promotion of environmentally friendly attitudes and improvement of the quality of life for residents thanks to infrastructure. What kind of infrastructure am I referring to? I'm referring to infrastructure which serves the purpose of good living. This is also something that helps us implement and the ideals of the European Green Deal.
My w Polsce, w ramach polskiej krajowej sieci miast CITTASLOW,
within the Polish network of CITTASLOW, we have already had experiences of the supra-local revitalization program.
Którego możliwość zrealizowania wynikała z faktu pozyskania wsparcia ze środków Unii Europejskiej.
Thanks to the funds of the European Union.
Program ma charakter operacyjny.
Is an operational program. It is sourced in a document which set out the rules for the use of European funds for the implementation of the actual idea of CITTASLOW. It has to be noted that this program did not only involve a revitalization, understood in terms of infrastructural revamping. It had a lot to do with the social issue, because we wanted very much indeed that the quality of life of citizens goes into ways, namely improvement of infrastructure as well as improvement in the social life. We wanted to see changes in terms of civic engagement on the part of citizens. We also wanted to see changes in terms of the social inclusion of marginalized groups, disadvantaged groups, at-risk groups, etc. We wanted to have them back in the actual life of local communities. We wanted to see the change in their mentality. We wanted them not to feel excluded any longer, and we wanted to have social services.
Nasz program dotyczył 19 miasteczek, a więc nie mała grupa. I nasz program
It is not a smaller group, and our program included almost 90 projects, the total value of almost 45 million euro. And currently, we have managed to successfully finish as many as 30 projects, both infrastructural projects and projects related to social changes. We are hoping to see the conclusion of all these projects by the end of this year, and we are currently summing up.
Klimatycznymi, ale również z osiągnięciami społecznymi. Przepraszam bardzo, chrypka troszkę się
I'm really sorry, my voice has been slightly deteriorated.
W ramach naszego programu, proszę Państwa, realizowaliśmy między innymi modernizację budynków publicznych.
Completed the revitalization of the public buildings.
Rewitalizację, poprawę efektywności energetycznej w budynkach mieszkalnych.
In residential buildings.
Realizowaliśmy działania na rzecz poprawy jakości przestrzeni publicznych, również rozumianych jako budowę ścieżek rowerowych.
We constructed bike lanes, bike routes, bike parking lots, as well as and also to allow for the public joint transportation modes. And I believe that these positive experiences that we've had, the fact that we have managed to have the experiences of 19 projects, this has made us bold enough to be able to get ourselves ready to yet another pilot project that now concerns circular economy. This is something to be implemented on the part of our municipalities, on the part of our individual municipalities. You must have observed that the circular economy is being brought to the table, especially in terms of SMEs, in terms of business in the business context. However, and it is something very much on a par with our observations, these are local authorities that can have their proper contribution into the actual implementation of projects related to circular economy. What do we want to do? We want our residents to be empowered to reuse the so-called waste. What do we mean by this? Imagine this kind of situation. Very often the residents get rid of bits and pieces of furniture that they no longer need. And we want to have points whereby you can collect such bits of furniture so that other agents, for example, social services or other entities that deal with providing care for people with disabilities, and these agents can further collect these furniture, and in cooperation with NGOs and local authorities, they can later renovate this furniture to be able to sell it. And funds obtained in this manner can be taken advantage of for the sake of running activities for people with disabilities. So this was all about local waste recycling, and we are not only limited to furniture. We are also thinking about other kinds of objects, be it small domestic objects. Furthermore, we intend to lower the amount of waste which is produced as we allow those objects to be reused. Moreover, we want to establish local environmentally friendly transportation means. And we are thinking especially in the context of local villages, smaller villages, which are very often overlooked in the context of zero-emission transportation. We want these localities to also provide their share in zero-emission policies. Zero-emission can also be possible by allowing residents to assemble their own PV installations, or making funds available for residents so that they can replace their boilers into better boilers from the point of view of emissions. Now we are precisely in this project. By the end of June, we are hoping to have all these assumptions concluded, and you can all see it in my presentation. And by the end of June, we want to have this document in place. And this document should be then made subject to the discussion at the level of local authorities of the Varmi and Masuria region. And to this end, we want to apply for the funds from the European Union's mechanism. And we are hoping for this to be our proper share into the European Green Deal. And additionally, we want this to be also a good practice for the CITTASLOW network and its confirmation of these ideas in practice. Thank you very much indeed for your attention.
Thank you, BOŻENA, CEBULSKA. I understand you. Thanks, very important contribution. But I understand you to the difficulty. It's to resume in short the huge experience of CITTASLOW, Polish CITTASLOW in the last about 15 years of CITTASLOW program. And all of us know the revitalization program and now the new challenge of the circular economy and the green mobility or quality of mobility in the Polish town. Congratulations, thanks for your indication and a very important speech. Now we go on with Janet Chambers from the SAMATAN CITTASLOW in France. She is a town councillor, and she will introduce the growing outside in the SAVÈS, GERS, in the southern part of France. Thank you, Janet Chambers, and greetings to you and to the mayor, please. We don't hear. Com'è? Sentite voi? We don't hear. Switch the microphone, I think. Open your microphone. There is headphone. You have to open the headphone. Try. No. We are sorry, we don't hear.
Can you hear me?
Take, yes, it's better. It's better without.
Okay, we'll go with that. Okay.
We hear. Please. Thank
right,
you.
I shall start with our
technical troubles is a daily matter. Please, you're welcome.
Okay, right. Oh, right. Our project this last year was growing up outdoors in the SAVÈS. So this is what I want to show you today. It's right. We started this project last year with many collaborators. The list of acronyms I have on the slide, they are involved with education, fruit environmental issues. So we called upon everyone to help us and advise us with this project. Where did our project originate? Monsieur Lefebvre, our mayor, read the book L'Enfant dans la nature, The Child in Nature, by Mathieu Chéroux et Monia Fauché-Delavigne. This is a French language publication with examples of other schools in France of where this type of schooling has been successfully established and how to work together with all the different authorities involved. This type of schooling is not the norm in France at this time. Who else read the book? Well, the majority of people involved with our schools read the book. The parents, the teachers, the mayors of others that we share our schooling facilities with, town councillors interested by this project. It got everyone talking. Could we actually do this in SAMATAN? So the discussion began of how we can do this and how to make this project viable. So we held a public conference on the 6th of October 2020. We invited the authors of the book and they were more than willing to come and help us discuss our plans. They gave a wonderful presentation to the interested parties and the public. We also invited some of our active collaborators to sign our charter, Growing Up Outdoors. With this charter, we can now move this project forward. So our journey began, starting with the research for our town, our schools and our children. Would this be beneficial to our children, our teachers and our community? Would it be worth the effort? Firstly, the problems: nature deficit disorders, delayed motor development, lack of balance, myopia, attention disorders, increased stress, speech disorders, psychotic disorders. As can be seen from this list, our modern lives are having a huge impact on our children. As can be seen from these headlines and reports, it is research that is happening worldwide. Progression of myopia in school-age children after COVID-19 home confinement. Impact of outdoor nature-related activities on the gut microbiota, fecal serotonin, and perceived stress in preschool children. the effect of environmental context on motor proficiency and social maturity of children. Outdoor education in Italian kindergartens, how teachers perceive child development trajectories. Environmental correlates of motor competence in children. Prescribing outdoor physical activity to children. Feasibility of implementing an outdoor walking break in Italian middle schools. This is not just a local issue, this is a worldwide issue for all of our children. We started with a survey because now we know we have the support, but does everyone want, or what does everyone want or expect? Children are rarely in touch with nature and exercise less than the average time recommended by the World Health Organization, who recommends at the moment 3 hours per day minimum. Families and teachers have a lack of knowledge of outdoor facilities and places that they could use or visit. There is too little offered in terms of outdoor activities for families and teachers. In addition to our survey, the COVID-19 pandemic created both the need to find more space for children at school and access to the outdoors. So this acted as a catalyst to get this project moving. The benefits for the children, most importantly, to acquire key 21st century skill sets, creativity, collaboration, critical thinking, communication, etc. Improves physical and mental health, gives them the tools to manage stress and anxiety whilst boosting their ego, reinforce knowledge gained from the curriculum, development of environmental awareness. By now, it was January 2021. The teachers, municipal staff and associations are working together, forming the foundations of our project. An action plan to help them get the children outside on a weekly basis is set up. Outdoor spaces are identified. We started work with partner schools in our neighbouring communes. By now, 4 primary schools are involved and they start this journey together. It all started to come together. It's now March 2021. Outdoor activities begin, teachers start to gain confidence, security and accessibility is optimized in key outdoor spaces. The project is shared with families who are invited to participate. Everyone is beginning to work together and learn how to do this new type of schooling. Finally, it's launch day. Our project went fully live on the 4th of May this year. After several months of planning and practicing with parents, supporting adults and teachers, it was now reality. A day of fun, laughter and relief because it was working and was finally in place. As you can see from the photos, at the top, we can see children playing in a wooded area, and to the top right is the area that they currently have within the school perimeters. The centre photo is an exploratory walk with the children in the local countryside. The bottom left is the children are discovering the local insect life. And bottom right is having a quick ride on the wagon that they use to take their water bottles and equipment with them when they leave the school premises. There are now also new opportunities to be had, such as music class in our local theatre. The children write their own songs and a local musician helps put them to music. At the end of the day, they then sing the song together. The benefits to the communities. Schools are the centre of our communities, the beating heart within. Improvements to school benefits, not only the school, but the pupils, the teachers, the families and the wider community. Families in particular benefit from the opportunity to better connect with their community via the school. With the schools using the format of children growing up outdoors, they can become involved with the gardens and green spaces of a community. These green spaces make our communities more attractive and appealing. This greening of communities helps us to attract new investments to further finance new projects. Also, with the magnet of a school, families visit the town every day, talk to each other, use the shops, and form a stronger community. As you can see from this picture, there's our little gardeners. Here we can see the children planting up one of many vegetable planters that we have around our town. Everyone is free to help themselves to the fruit and vegetables as they ripen through the year. And the children tend these boxes every week to make sure that they are healthy. And here are some photos of what they've been up to. In the top photo, we see their Wellington boots lined up outside of their classroom, ready for use for the next time they go out to play and study. On the left, an expedition to our lake and time for exploring tree bark. And on the right, a green square in our town showing how we live with nature around us and why we encourage our children to enjoy it. As for the future, by this September, when the schools go back, there will be 6 additional elementary classes at Samatan, an extra class at Montpezat, and 2 additional kindergarten classes at Noyan. This will give us 9 additional classes for 2021-2022. So this will make a grand total of 16 classes from September 2021 in our commune that will be following the Living Outdoors at School project. Thank you for listening and watching our project.
Janet Chambers, very good. We are moved. Very, very interesting project. After many words, when we look this kind of experiences into CITTASLOW, we are just very more strong and active, thanks to you. Children and nature. And so children in the nature, but also schools in the center of the community is so important teaching. The outdoor activities and the natural contact, we know it is strategical and absolutely important for the present and the future. Green activities. Thank you to Samatan and thank you to you.
Thank you for allowing us to present it today.
Great. And so we go on to the last speaker. She is Andrea MEARNS from Wales. In Wales, there are 2 CITTASLOW. One is mold, and the mold is so committed, the community, to fight the plastic invasion, the plastic pollution, all levels. Thank you. Good morning, Andrea. Welcome. It's a pleasure. Please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me to tell you about what we're doing here in Mould to try and reduce the amount of plastic pollution. And it touches, I think, on what all of the speakers have talked about today. It fits in with various high-level international goals. And it also gives our local residents the option of choosing more sustainable methods of taking their takeaway food home. So I've got a presentation here I'd like to share with you.
Lo fa lei. Okay.
Can you see that okay?
Lei non mi sente? Not yet. Please take time.
Try again.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It
Good.
is. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the scheme that we're using here has got the catchy title of Naked Takeaway, and it's a reusable food containers. It's a unique year-long pilot across 3 towns in northeast Wales, Mould, Cerwis and Llangollen. It involves 6 businesses, 3 town councils and Mould plastic reduction. And Mould and Llangollen are both CITTASLOW towns, as Pierre Giorgio has just said. So the scale of the problem, according to Friends of the Earth, when they're looking at reducing household contribution to marine plastic pollution, they include disposable food containers and takeaway containers in the top 10 sources of plastic pollution, with billions used here in the UK each year. At the top of the waste hierarchy is prevention, which includes direct reuse of items that have not become waste. By offering metal reusable food containers, the Naked Takeaway creates a sustainable takeaway scheme. These 2019-2020 Flintshire figures for recycling rates are from the Welsh Government. Over the last 12 months, Flintshire County Council has seen a rise in household residual waste and recycling due to COVID, and I'm sure that's the same across all of your towns as well. Presently in the UK, both households and businesses continue to send significant volumes of waste to landfill or incineration each year. So by adopting a circular economy, resources are kept in use for as long as possible. The Naked Takeaway tiffin tins are made of stainless steel. They can be reused indefinitely, and they come in either 2 or 3 tier containers. Stainless steel is 100% recyclable with no downcycling and a high post-consumer value. The Naked Takeaway pizza cases are aluminium alloy, and the manufacturers state that they can be used up to 30 times. Once the pizza cases do need recycling, they can be completely recycled infinite times. The 99% aluminium alloy, and the recycling process uses 5% of the energy used for the production of virgin aluminium. As restrictions ease, the project assists in the green recovery of the 6 eco-conscious businesses involved. It adds to the personalised service they have on offer, providing their customers with another choice. And that's part of what GIACOMO said about nudge. And they're also reducing the amount of single-use plastics and cardboards that the businesses use. Thanks to a grant from the Welsh Government Circular Economy Fund awarded to Mold Town Council and partners, the 6 businesses involved in the year-long pilot are able to offer a reusable container at no financial risk to themselves. 3 of the 6 businesses involved are getting fantastic feedback from their customers about the reusable tins. Chris Ansloof and Steve Spooner of Spoons and Forks say that our customers prefer the tins to our cardboard packaging, as apart from creating less waste, they also keep the food hotter. They're especially good for our takeaway Sunday roast dinners. We will definitely continue to use them after the trial is over. So when we started this project, we worked out that here in the 3 towns with 6 businesses, there would be 26,000 single-use plastic containers not in circulation by offering the tiffin tins and the pizza cases, and 5,200 single-use cardboard pizza cases would not be in circulation. At the moment, it's looking unlikely that we'll meet those figures for a number of reasons. The impact on lockdown on businesses and what they're able to offer. One of the businesses has been closed since the start of the last lockdown and will not reopen until June. And 3 of the businesses are taking a softly approach. And they're only using the tins for customers who actually ask for them, rather than offering the tins. We've got to get the message out there, and some of the businesses have seized the marketing opportunity to promote themselves as eco-friendly. So this is an indication of what sort of coverage we've been getting in the local press and in our local magazines, how many people are looking at us on social media, and internationally, it's obviously great to speak to you all today so that we can get the message out to you all. That might be something that you'd like to adopt in your towns too. This project started in March this year, so it will only happen with the support of our local residents, and that to us is so important.
Thank you so much. Great, Andrea. Andrea Merz was our Vice President of CITTASLOW International. I learned today that it's not only Mold, but also Llangollen joined in this important project. Thanks so much. And we have finished our first webinar of Academy 2021. CITTASLOW, you understand, is ideas, is vision, principles, but overall is facts and action. It is urgent to change our style of life. It is obvious. And to create an economic system more in harmony with nature. Thank you so much to all speakers. Very good and smart, great. And appointment to the next webinar this afternoon at 5 o'clock Rome time. Rediscover the local resilience market and made in CITTASLOW. Tomorrow, other two webinars, 10 o'clock CITTASLOW youth, very important, new ideas and projects between CITTASLOW and youth. And at 5 o'clock with the President Mauro Migliorini, the agrobiology and the CITTASLOW bees. Thank you for your attention.
Bye and thanks.
Bye.